Hi, my name is Robert Chelle with Chelle Law, and I'm an attorney that assists nurse practitioners with employment contract and independent contractor agreement issues. Today I'm going to talk about private practice versus hospital employment for nurse practitioners. So what are the main differences between being in private practice versus being a hospital employee, and then some things that you should think about before signing the contract. So first, compensation-wise, the main difference would be if you are on some kind of RVU productivity-based compensation model, that's only going to be in a hospital environment. You're not going to see that in like an outpatient clinic. If they're going to use some kind of productivity-based compensation model, it would be collections, meaning you get a percentage of whatever the practice collects based upon your personally performed services. Now, what's important for either of the models, either RVU based or collections based, there needs to be some kind of guarantee period. It simply takes time for any provider to get comfortable, to build up a patient base, to be efficient. And so to immediately start under some kind of productivity model is a bad idea. I would say a minimum of a year guarantee. Even better would be 2. A good rule of thumb is a practice kind of reaches maturity somewhere around 12 to 18 months. So if you can get through that period, you can feel confident that wherever you're at, productivity-wise, is the level that you're going to hold. So just be careful not to enter into any position where it's just an immediate collections-based contract. Is one better than the other? No, I don't think so. It's just the type of setting where you're at. Now, what does matter is whether it's a fair value. So for an RVU, stands for relative value unit, and they use a work RVU for a nurse practitioner, and it simply means every encounter that you have generates an RVU value, and then that value is multiplied times a compensation factor, which is a monetary amount. So I don't know, anywhere from $25 to $50 would be a compensation factor, and that's based upon specialty and geography. And so if you generated, let's say, 1,000 RVUs in a quarter, then you would multiply that. Let's say it's $30, and so 1,000 times 30, and then that would be what your compensation would be for that quarter. Now, collections-based model, somewhere between 30 to 40% would be a normal amount for an NP. And then they would do a reconciliation either every pay period, every month, every quarter, something like that. And then for either of those, there could be some kind of guaranteed amount, and then they would reconcile your actual production versus what they paid off to you, and then you would get a bonus if there was a surplus. There's a ton of different ways of doing it. So that's the first main difference in compensation between private practice and hospital employment. Next, malpractice insurance. Generally, if you're working as a hospital employee, you're never going to have to worry about or pay for your malpractice insurance. They're going to cover your underlying premium, and then they're also going to cover tail insurance as well if they use a claims-made policy. Whereas if you're working in private practice, it's very likely that the employer will use a claims-made policy, and then the NP will be responsible for purchasing tail coverage. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on that right now, but for an NP, wouldn't be uncommon to have a tail cost of $2,000 to $3,000. It'd be a one-time payment, but still something that you would prefer not to have to pay, and that is definitely negotiable. Benefits. Usually if you're with a larger hospital or healthcare network, the benefits are a little better, whereas it's definitely hit or miss if you're in private practice. Some practices don't offer almost any benefits. Normal benefits would be like health, vision, dental, life, disability, retirement, pay for your dues and fees for your nursing board, DEA registration, AANP, any of those types of things. Your continuing education, you should have a budget for that as well. So usually if you're in a hospital, it's a little bit better than if you're in private practice. Now, autonomy levels are another one. Now, this is obviously state specific. There are some states where you're completely autonomous as an NP, and others where you need a collaborating physician or provider. Once again, you need to look into what are the expectation levels. I find that in a hospital environment, even if, like, for instance, I lived in Arizona for a long period of time in a practice there, and in Arizona, nurse practitioners are autonomous. Even then, if they enter into a hospital environment, the hospital will still require them to have some kind of supervising physician, whereas in other states where they're required to have it anyway, that's something you're going to have to look into. Is one better than the other? No, I don't, not at all. I mean, it just simply depends what you're looking for. For some specialties, you're just not going to find it in private practice. Obviously, if you're doing hospitalist work or ED work, you're going to have to work in a hospital, whereas if you're going to do primary care or something like that, private practice would be the route to go. It's simply based upon the preference of the nurse practitioner, but I wouldn't say one is, definitely better than the other. That both have their ups and, or I guess their pros and cons, as far as whether it's a good environment to work in or not. All right, that's a little bit about private practice versus hospital employment for a nurse practitioner. If you have any questions about your employment contract or independent contractor agreement, feel free to contact my law firm at the information listed below in the description. And I appreciate you watching the video. All right, thanks. Take care.